Hey, Clover here, and this is a weird video as I'm not actually going to be able to see this video come out because I'm going to be on holiday when this comes out. Also, if anything or any news comes out that disproves it, which I don't expect it will, but if that does happen, then I wasn't around to see it. I'm sorry. Also, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, I'm trying to get to 1,000 by the end of the summer holiday, which would be amazing, and I'm pretty close to 700 as I'm recording this. Also, I mentioned this last video, but please check out my pilot Deltarune. It's an ARG I'm working on. I think it's really good, so if you could check that out, that would be amazing. Also, if it doesn't exist right now, please, if anyone could, make a subreddit for it. I would do it myself, but I really just don't have the time to moderate something like that. But other than that, please enjoy this theory. First, I'm going to try and figure out who the secret boss in Chapter 5 will be. While it's unlikely I'm going to be able to figure out directly, I think I can figure out a few good ideas on who it could be. First of all, a popular theory still about the secret boss is that it's going to be the friend inside me theory. This might be weird to some people, as friend inside me was a theory specifically for Chapter 3. But there is still evidence that a similar idea of the cowboy show being the secret boss could still take place in Chapter 5. This is because we know that Chapter 5 will take place at Asgard's due to the prophecy in Chapter 4. And also, we know that Asgard loved the show, even though it's over, and has a TV in his room. This could mean he has VHS's recordings of the show that could become the secret boss. While this would be funny and would be really cool to see, I don't think it will be the case because Toby Fox made a reference to this theory in Chapter 4, and I don't think he would do that if the theory was going to come true in Chapter 5. The next theory I want to go over is a theory that I had where it's going to be a flowery type character. We know that in Asgard's room there's a flower that represents each soul from Undertale. But there's one flower that's the golden flower that's supposed to represent flowering. Obviously, Asgard and Des both have deep connections to Asriel, and if it's Des making a dark fountain in Asriel's house, or in Asgard's house even, it would make sense that the dark world would have some themes of Asriel left in it. And it will make sense for Flowey to take on, or the Flowey type character to take on these roles due to the meta context of that character. While this would be cool, I don't think this character will be the secret boss. I do think Flowey type character will appear, but I think it's just going to be a more basic dark that we have to face, like a mini boss, or just the main boss of the area. As they are seen at the head of the other character, or the other flowers, so it makes sense that they will be the leader of the flowers. Now, the final one I have is a little bit more specific, but hear me out on this one. I think there's a very high chance that the secret boss for Chapter 5 could be Friend. Whether you call this character device_friend or friend or PNG, Friend is obviously a very important character to Deltarune, even though they haven't yet shown up directly. If you don't know, Friend is this face that appears every now and then. Each chapter they've appeared, whether it be in Spamton's basement, Eram's attacks, Ralsei's explanation of Dark Worlds, or more roughly, could be the character, the pointed tail referenced in the prophecy. The reason I say this character could be the secret boss is because, first of all, this character is very clearly connected to a lot of themes. I will link a video in the description that goes with this very well. I can't remember who it's by, but linked in the description to them. But this character connects to everything very well, but hasn't shown up yet. And I think it would make sense for them to show up in Chapter 5, due to the fact that if they don't show up yet, then by Chapter 6 and 7, which probably will be more of the point of the game where characters or big important story points stop getting introduced, and instead we start getting things tied up, and all the loose ends tied together. So for a character who's going to be as important as Friend, it would make sense for them to show up in Chapter 5. Now, also, this character has a lot of connections to previous secret bosses. Like, Spamton is the first time we ever see them, and Eram literally uses them as an attack. Also, in the prophecy, if the pointed tail is friend, which I think they will be friend, as pointed tail is made up of circles, and friend is likely a cat, or specifically a cat from the game Cat Petters, which is based on a real game where the cats are made up of circles. And the tail is made up of circles, meaning that that most likely is going to be friend. The reason that it's important is because it tells us not to follow the pointed tail. And that means that the prophecy would most likely be telling us not to do what the pointed tail tells us to do, because the pointed tail is trying to lead us away from the prophecy. And that's interesting, because the idea of being led away from the prophecy, or not doing what we're meant to do, is a common theme with all the secret bosses, with Jevil's I Can Do Anything, Spamton being a required boss in the weird route, Eram's whole thing being to do what you want and having freedom, and Garson directly telling us not to follow the prophecy. It would make sense that Friend, who is said to lead us away from the prophecy, would be the secret boss for Chapter 5. For a little bit of a shorter section, I just want to talk about how this character will be introduced and what their whole personality will be. We haven't really spoken to Friend. To my knowledge, we haven't seen anything about them. The only connections we really have is the fact that one person to talk about them has their sentences jumbled up. And other than that, we really don't know. But if you allow me to speculate for a bit, Friend is very clearly connected to Gaston in some way, due to the fact that their naming schemes, device underscore friend, is the same thing as got device underscore gonna maker, and all capitalized, which is how Gaston names things, which is something I mentioned in my Gaston theory. So it's clear that this character will be connected to Gaston. Also, due to their laugh and big smile, I think they're going to be a bit more of a trickster character. It's very hard to say what they're going to be like, but if I had to guess, they would be almost like a genie, where they will have a lot of power, but they will use it to play tricks on us, and they will let us have our way, have our freedom, but with a catch or a twist, as that seems to be a connection with Eram, where they give us freedom, but it's a very negative freedom, more so the weird root form of freedom. So, and Friend appears in that fight, meaning that Friend might like the idea of giving us what we want, or giving Chris what they want, through freedom, but in the worst way possible. Obviously, that part's purely speculation, but the next part I think is going to be a little bit more, based in actual evidence. Now, I want to talk about the fight. I think we have a pretty good idea of how this secret boss, or hidden boss, actually, yeah, let me explain this for a second. I think we're changing the name of secret boss to hidden boss as a community, due to the fact there's now bosses that are hidden, and bosses that have the shadow crystal, and they don't have to be the same. Chapter 4 has 2 hidden bosses, Mike and Garson, and only Garson gets a crystal. And Chapter 3 has a secret boss or a hidden boss who doesn't give a shadow crystal, and a non-hidden boss who does give a shadow crystal. So for the rest of this video, I'm going to be calling them hidden bosses. I'm still getting some terminologies mixed up. Stuff like the bunker now being called the shelter, throwing me off a bit. But the point is, I think I know how the fight's going to go down. I think within this fight, instead of it being Chris, Ralsei, and Susie, I think it's going to be specifically a fight against our friend and Ralsei. This would make sense, because Chapter 3 secret boss was Chris vs Eram, and it was about Chris's want for freedom. Chapter 4's secret boss was Garson vs Susie, and Susie's want for a prophecy gone forever, and prophecy not to have the end. And then Chapter 3 would be the secret boss versus Ralsei. Now this means that Ralsei is going to have to learn some lesson from the secret boss, or have some connection to the secret boss. Well, Susie's was obviously a very positive lesson. I don't think it has to be a positive lesson with Ralsei, due to the fact that Chris's connection was a much more negative one with the freedom. So instead, I think the most likely candidate for what Ralsei's going to connect them with is the fact that Ralsei doesn't think they can be their own person. This will then be reflected in Friend, who directly is their own person and is able to break the prophecy, as the prophecy literally says that they can do that. And so Friend versus Ralsei would be a character who thinks the prophecy has to happen, versus a character who doesn't think it has to happen. And one wants it to not happen in a good way, and one wants it to not happen in a bad way, and that's going to be a clash between the two. Friend's going to try and get Ralsei to use their want for the prophecy to have a different ending, to get Ralsei to follow the pointed trail, or pointed tail even, and do whatever bad thing the Friend wants us to do to break the prophecy. While Ralsei is going to try and probably going to try and like get around that, and well, we'll agree that the ending's bad, we'll disagree with the way Friend wants to go around it. This would also have a lot of implications and connections to the weird route, with maybe even Friend just straight up saying the fact that you already have followed this route if you're on the weird route. And maybe on the weird route, Ralsei will then actually start helping us do the weird route after fighting Friend. Obviously that last bit's speculation, but I do very much so think that if whoever the secret boss is going to be, it's going to be Ralsei versus the secret boss, and it will kind of comment on Ralsei's lack of self-hate, where Ralsei thinks that they're just an object that should be used. Well, Friend doesn't think they should. Friend literally is the opposite, where they think everyone should be used by them, and they try to use people, whereas Ralsei gets used by people, which will then mean Friend will, maybe not even directly, but maybe inadvertently, will get Ralsei to realise they can't let people push them around as much, as Friend will try and get them to do something that they don't want to do. Thanks for watching this video. For future videos, I'm going to be including a few fan art, fan submissions, or just memes about the channel people have sent me on Twitter. So if you want to be in this end section, please send it to me at CloverBClover on Twitter. There should be a link in the description to my account, or you could use my community tab, as I believe people can now post on it. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.